Hello, everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk, etc. And I'm your host, Greg Morgan, and I'm here with a wonderful person who is a filmmaker, an independent filmmaker who, uh, as I stated in my profile, just a lot of things out there that she's involved in. You wear many hats, my friend. I'd like to introduce you to Nicole Franklin, um, movie maker, director, writer, producer, key grip. I mean, you probably.
And cheap bottle washer. Yes, yes.
Sure, a little chefdom out there, you know.
I make sandwiches. I do everything.
Yeah, indeed. Well, let me tell you this, Nicole. I kind of came across you indirectly, looking up independent filmmakers and trying to find a little bit more about my own culture. And I saw you, and I saw your trailer of the films that you made, and it really piqued my interest. And so I wanted to find more and more about you, as I have about some of the other filmmakers I've been looking into, and I was really impressed. So I hope you, want everyone out there who's listening and watching to know that I was impressed. And you know, your resume is impressive on its own. I really
Full
got
of a woman with no life. No.
Well, that's another impressive thing. I'm thinking, without any food, how you're doing this, I don't understand. But I just want you to know, from those of us on the outside looking in, it's pretty impressive.
Wow.
So you should be.
Thanks,
we're proud of you. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to ask you a few questions about film. I'd like to talk to you about some of the films that you've made. And we were talking earlier, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm really into music. And so one of the things that piqued my interest was the piece that you did with Anne Brown. So we'll get to that later. So I have a barrage of questions for you.
Bring it on, bring it on.
That's what I like, enthusiasm. That's how it always starts, It's always enthusiastic originally. Okay, well, I guess the first question I want to ask, and hopefully other people are really interested, because we don't really know about what drives people to do what they do. So why film? What is it about this medium that creatively intrigues you?
Oh, that seems to be like a two-part question when it comes from kind of the impetus for this. I remember a friend of mine telling me, my friend Dwayne, hey Dwayne, he had just emailed me on Facebook, so saying that with film, I mean, you get to a lot of people at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was that kind of, the numbers thing kind of struck a chord, because if I wanted a lot of people to hear what I was trying to say, and basically for decades, since I was a young girl, I've been wanting to say, hey, there's some stories out here that I want to see about my community that aren't being told. I mean, we're very entertaining in a non-threatening way as far as African Americans in the U.S. And so there's some stories out here that need to be told. And I grew up on television, watching television, performing on stage, but watching television. So I always knew that I wanted to work in television. When my friend told me that about film, I was like, yeah, that's true. I mean, you do reach a lot of people at once. And now, of course, there's that gray area of films airing on television and telefilms, and, the mini series and the two-parter on TV that feels just as dramatic as when we used to, pay the big bucks to go to the theater and have that theatrical experience. Now everybody's kind of settling down in front of their binge watch session, to get the storylines they love, to soak those up. So, like I said, the lines are kind of blurred right now, but it's about storytelling through cinema, the visual, and reaching a lot of people at once. You actually do, what I realized later is that you do reach a lot of people through television, probably much more than film because of the cost. And a lot of the film festivals and film marketers at film markets would tell us, don't be afraid if someone offers you a TV deal versus a film theatrical deal, because millions will see your product on film. It may not have the financial rewards, but it might reach more of an audience. And that's true. I've been on a lot of cable networks with my product, thankfully, and millions of people have seen a Nicole Franklin something and team. So we're really happy about that.
Well, it's kind of ironic because that actually segues into my next question for you, really. When you're coming up to making good films, and when it comes to making good films, one needs to be able to tell a story and bring it to their audience and bring that story to the audience. What do you believe makes you a good storyteller?
I listen a lot. I know I talk a lot, but I listen. I'm actually really listening, and I'm really intrigued by people I don't know, subcultures I'm not familiar with, and a different perspective. And I love sharing a different perspective with people. I'm an educator. I grew up in a house of educators, so it's just natural for me to want to tell people, I heard this really cool thing and I want you to hear it too, and I want you to absorb it and dissect it and chew on it and spit it out and know it, and share it with people. And so I get really excited when I introduce new concepts just from something that I learned in meeting someone on the street who had an incredible story. So if it excites me and I haven't heard it in the common dialogue, then I've got to share it with people, and I want people to be able to share it. So there's, a defined way to tell the story to make sure everybody hears it as well as I heard it and they understand it. You can possibly own a part of it as far as, and having it into their soul, and really understanding it and sharing it, passing it on.
Very cool. And I too come from a house full of educators, so I can understand that type
that
of
Midwestern flavor. Love it. Chicago guy. Love it.
That's right. So let me ask you this. How long is your process from conception to production? What kind of challenges do you have when you're dealing with trying to get this out and during your process?
Well, it depends. Every project is different. I've done more than 10 films. I've got to start counting them because that's going to get old. But every project's different. So with Little Brother, that's a 10-chapter series. And so each chapter is 15 minutes. The point was not to spend months and years on one film about young Black men and their thoughts and expressions on love. The point was to get it out there and to visit 10 different places around the US and to give it back to the community and let many other communities see, and educators especially, see how wonderful and brilliant these Black boys are between the ages of 9 and 13. So the process, the concept's evolving still, in that we've done 5 chapters, and we decided about 2 or 3 years ago that the next at least 4 chapters would be done by celebrity directors. So again, so you're always kind of shape-shifting a bit and saying, hey, what if we approach it this way or get a large audience that way? But the initial concept to when are we going to start shooting, probably about 3 or 4 months on that one. My very first film took 8 months to do, 3 weeks in editing. A film that we did recently, a feature film, the first narrative feature. We've done a documentary feature before a long time ago, but the first narrative feature was done this summer from concept. Concept was last June. Final script was delivered in April, May, and then we were shooting in July for 8 days. And now it's in editing, hopefully done by October 1st. So wow. It's kind of, the process with me is kind of a little quicker than it should be, maybe because I grew up as a news videotape editor. We're not on videotape anymore, we're digital, but we crazy, huh? It is and it's a crazy experience, and it's a skill to receive footage, and then 2 minutes to 10 minutes later it's on the air, for millions of people or whatever. So it's something you got to be a little different. I think, to do it, but it was the best training ever. I work with the best teams on network television, and I've gotten so much of education from the men and women who trained me and surrounded me with, yeah, with when literally the world is falling apart and you got to tell other people about it through something you have to edit together, like I said, in 2 minutes. It's something that you learn how to do, and you don't think about it, you just do. So like I said, it's great training and storytelling on the quickness.
Indeed. I'm even more impressed now because that's got to be a little harrowing to try to get all that done so quickly.
It only got harrowing in a couple of instances, and I've been editing since 1990. Long time.
Wow, 6 years old. That's great.
That's like 26 years. It's a long time. So if it only a couple of instances can I point to and say, oh, we almost didn't make it, or, you know, so it really is a culture that you're either in and you can do it, or, you know, it's not for you. And you gotta have a crazy sense of humor about it, and because I usually work in morning television, and so we're up at 2 and 3 in the morning, you know, doing it. So we're half asleep when we're doing it, but it's we don't get super stressed. It's like we know how to. It's very strange, but it's a different culture. It's not for everybody, but it was the best training to be a filmmaker for me. And I have hats off to everybody I ever worked with. 17 years at NBC News, 7 years recently at CBS News, and very appreciative of all my friends that really always helped me out in the editing room.
So it's kind of interesting. Education is a big deal throughout our lives, especially those of us who try to pay attention, as much attention to it. So the education is twofold. It's education that we receive and education that we give off. Have you been able to mentor other filmmakers who are aspiring to be similar or like yourself from the education that you got, and have you seen them blossom?
Yes. And then it's funny because I'll have some people tell me, oh, you were my mentor without knowing you were. So I'm like, really? What did I say? What did I do? I think now it's easier because I do set up forums in different social media spaces where I can I'm posting a lot to everybody. That's what I think. Like, oh, you're talking all the time and you're posting stuff all the time. You're so busy. But it's a great way to just keep feeding everyone the knowledge that I'm getting, you know, and siphoning it a bit and feeding it out. So that's great. One-on-one mentorship is extremely important. I still look for mentors. You know, I'm in my 40s. I still look for mentors. And yeah, I meet young people all the time. And I think it comes from the fear of, please don't go down the road I did in some situations. Avoid this madness and avoid calling that person. You know, I'll always, you know, like give one nugget of advice, or, you know, the main thing I end up saying a lot to a lot of sometimes high school, but a lot of college and right out of college in their 20s, young filmmakers and storytellers, is I'll say, here's my card, give me a call, best to send me an email, stay in touch. And they don't stay in touch. And so, so stay in touch, people, because I get other people contacting me for jobs for a junior editor or a junior producer or something like that. And if we had been in touch, you know, and talking and getting to know each other, or you've come and assisted me on a project at one time, then I can recommend you. And that's all this is. And so I love being in touch with young people. I am in touch with a number of them, but for those who don't call, I think that's been a weird phenomenon, because I've heard it not just with me, but a lot of people. And I know we're all busy, but it is important to stay in touch. And that's how I've gotten my breaks, from just literally just listening to an older person who said, hey, stay in touch with me or I'll help you do that. I'm like, great, I'm calling you now because I really want that help that you offered 2 weeks ago. You know, and following up is a big thing. Showing up is a big thing.
And I guess even from my own experiences, I think a lot of people just don't feel that people are approachable. And even though they may have said something to them, they're thinking, well, they're just saying that. They're not really, they don't really mean it. And I think more and more people need to take people up on those suggestions, on those invitations, and if nothing else, see if that's true. And that would be so much more helpful to people, I think. Very cool. Well, I like that in you. Very, very cool.
Well, thanks. I like that people before me did that for me. So
And that's the whole thing. We was the adage is we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us.
for
But
sure.
if you're not willing to climb the shoulders, then how can we help you? It's kind of a hard situation sometimes. So hopefully those people who are listening and who may see this in the future will take you up on it, and maybe later on you can tell them how they can at least find some of your online material so they can get in touch with you and or read it a little bit more and get more inspiration from the things that you've written
Well,
down.
it's very simple. NicoleFranklin.com.
And I have to admit, I've read a lot because you write a lot. Just saying. I'm like, oh my God. No, I don't read it that way. You write a lot, and it's great because
I get the hint, Gregory. I get the hint.
I'm one of those people that's being informed by the things that you leave behind. So I appreciate that, and I hope other people will appreciate that too. But yeah, it's a lot of stuff, and you cover a lot of subjects. I really appreciate it. So just saying.
Oh, great.
Next question is, what is it about your films that are different, and you feel that you're compelled to have the audience be a part of? And what is it about your films that you want them to be able to see, be able to take in, and even give you a chance when they see that it's available to be seen, that you can get through that question?
Yeah. Well, it used to be that my film centered around a Black woman's joy. I know that growing up in the 70s and really loving, you know, my ancestry and what I was about in my community, the negative things were always about Black women, you know, quick to give you a slap and quick to jerk their neck and quick to tell you off. Okay, so there may be that, but there's also a joyfulness and a playfulness and a wonderfulness, you know, and a love like no other that will come from a Black woman. And so, you know, my first few films were on double Dutch jump rope, and you can't get more joyful than that. And, you know, meeting the double Dutch divas who are just wow, and their joy. And even with Anne Brown, you know, the original Best Before Again Best, sass and talent and sultry and joy in her singing, a passion for singing that took her around the world. And even with Little Brother, it was, you know, that the fact that I met so many women and put them on camera, and people would say, what about the men in their lives? You know, how do they feel about their women doing this? And I was like, that's interesting. We haven't had too many Black men at all talking about what it's like to experience love. In fact, where do they first learn about it? And that's how we got to Little Brother, and covering an age group, a younger age group, when they first discover what love means. And a lot for them in that age group means family and togetherness. But again, that's a lot to do with the mother and father, but it's still kind of a line to Black women and their joy. Now, so I say it's until now because the recent film we shot this summer is called Title VII, and it goes back to the subcultures. When I meet people who let's, you know, find out, or maybe we trip upon their differences and how a culture might be a little strange, or I would never do that. Well, I like to dive in and say, why does this happen in this certain environment or with this certain group of people? So Title VII is a civil rights act decades ago, right, that was preventing sexual and racial harassment in the workplace. And so I call the film Title VII, and we have this film that talks about a Black female CEO who does not hire Black people. And it's very much a film on same race discrimination in the office. And what we ended up with was a film that was about bad behavior all day long. So So it's not too joyful. It is actually, now that we're watching the edit come together, and the shoot, because we had, some interesting times on the shoot where I didn't really see until I saw the edited scenes that are coming to me from my talented editor Veronique Dumbe, is that it's dark and twisted. So we have a dark and twisted movie coming out this fall, which is very different, but it does introduce you to something new, which is something that I always try to do when it comes to our culture. And same race discrimination is a taboo subject. It's something that we don't normally talk about because most of the times we don't recognize it. And if we recognize it, we don't want to spread it around too much because it's like, did that just happen to me? So, so it's, we're going to dive in.
It's funny because I think a lot of times I'm just going to say people in general, because it's not everybody, but we're quick to accuse or put our angst on this segment or that segment and not realizing that maybe that segment is me, maybe that segment is the group that we're around, maybe that segment is us doing the same things that we accuse other people of doing. And so it gets very hypocritical very quickly. But we don't recognize it. We don't see it. We don't see it in ourselves. And that's interesting. So bring on Twisted.
All right, you said.
I want to see what I look like in the midst of all this stuff, Now, in the midst of doing all these films and trying to express different viewpoints that are, of course, seemingly very positive from what I've taken from the things that I've seen from you so far. Have you had any backlash about the subject matter that you've chosen to do in your films?
Yeah, not hate mail or things like that. I think a lot of people appreciate that I try to explore all angles. And if I'm really passionate about something, you will see one side of me. That's it. It's just, I'll take one side of the issue. And they'll be like, yeah, that's right. Because we know that deep down, she really feels that way. And a few times I'll say, deep down, I really feel that way. What I try to do is approach things objectively. Mm-hmm. And even in the storytelling, it was interesting because my very first film, my friend Harold was really complimentary. And I always remembered this compliment. And he said, I saw you in that film. Mm-hmm. And I saw what you were trying to say. And so definitely with documentary, which I grew up doing documentaries, I'm a career documentarian, I've done a lot of them, is that it is getting pretty much the filmmaker's point of view. So so I'll have to admit that it's not too objective anymore, because I really want to bring home that this is what I want you to see. Here's a hint of how you've been seeing it, but this is kind of really what I want you to see. So that's interesting. But what was the question again?
we're looking for backlash. People taking your opinion and not liking it.
Right. And so I do tell people this about the Little Brother project. Little Brother, we've been to 5 areas already of the country. And I always refer to Black audiences, primarily Black audiences, when we screen in front of Black audiences. This is a discussion piece, and that it's 15 minutes. And it always, as soon as the credits roll, people want to talk about it because they don't get to see that much at all in large or small quantities. Young Black men on camera talking about love and their feelings. So it gets them talking, which is great. That's what we wanted.
Right.
But when we're accused of just covering the Cosby kids, this was back before the Bill Cosby stuff. But it was,
right. It's that type of child, that type of
child versus the gang kids. Mm-hmm. You're like, well, you're just talking to the Cosby kids. And I remember when people would come up and say that, and I'm like, well, actually, we focused on one topic mainly. We hit the highlights of what was in their neighborhood and in their environment. Mm-hmm. And then we kind of zone in on the one topic, and we only have 15 minutes. Right. But you do not know what we know about these children. Mm-hmm. So And then we were one time in an environment where it was a primarily white audience, and this woman came up to me, desperate to know why we didn't talk about drugs in the piece, because she was missing that. And
Mm.
it was like, again, we're only focusing, on this aspect. And if it came up, it came up. If it didn't, and we weren't going to force it.
Right.
And she's like, but some of these kids are probably on drugs. And again, she's got this script in her head for
Hmm.
what Black American boys are supposed to be and all that
Right.
stuff. And so that was disappointing to hear that from her. And but then again, and then from the Black audience, I found it most surprising that they're like, well, we didn't even know that these feelings existed in this amount of coverage, and that you can get so many boys talking about this. Well, we have to ask and we have to listen. We have to ask certain questions and listen and be open to certain ideas that are away from the norm and the social script that they're always getting.
Hmm.
So, so hopefully it's opening ideas. But yeah, to be accused of we're only going after the good guys. Well, you don't know. You do not know that one of the guys that I'm interviewing is homeless, and another came from a family of problems, let's just say.
Hmm.
So we didn't put that on camera.
Hmm.
We put, we're 9 to 13 years old in our boys. So there is a certain amount of innocence you get to see, which is nice because hopefully we're showing that even in the dark day, they have that little bit of light. So I don't know. It's just, it's good to hear. That's true.
And here's the thing. In this world, there's so much negative out there. So when you're introduced to a positive essence from especially a child, you know, it always goes back to children. It should. To try to find the negative, to try to find the other part of someone, I don't know, it just seems kind of crazy to me. Um, you want to find the best part of the child and be able to utilize that to help increase that, you hope. And as you alluded to, you've got people who are in dire situations. And the fact that they're even talking to you in itself is a godsend.
It really is. And in one case, it really literally was a godsend because we were um, traveling around with a mentor who helped us find the boys. And
Hmm.
he hadn't been at one of his young charges' homes at his personal house. He had only seen the boy with the grandparent. Our premise was that we visit them, at their space,
Right.
either at their favorite place or at home or whatever. And then this young man invited us to his home. Well, thank God, because within minutes, we knew something was wrong.
Hmm.
There was someone in the house that shouldn't have been there. And as soon as we showed up, and like literally it was 2 minutes into it, the mentor's behind me texting everybody he knew. We got to do something. I'm at so and so's house. We need to get him
Wow.
out of here. And it was great because had we not done this
Wow.
project, there was no reason for him to have gone over. He was always seeing him, at the center. So it was so thank goodness.
Wow. Gotta love that. Gotta love that. So let's talk about some of those projects that you mentioned a little bit about different ones. Um, I guess for me, one of the ones that I had an affinity for was the one that you did with Anne Brown, the Gershwin and Best, the dialogue with Anne Brown. And you had mentioned Sassy. I was talking to my wife a little earlier on one of the segments that I watched when she was actually auditioning for George Gershwin, and how sassy she was with his inquiry. And when he asked her to sing a Negro spiritual, how she was abacked by that and took it kind of personal. I thought that was so cool. And I think it's great when you're doing something like this, when you get the real person's real feeling about something that's being said or asked. And I just thought that was so cool. And I am a person that fortunately had some classical music in my background. And so I have a really great appreciation. But one of my favorite songs of all time is Summertime from Porgy and Bess. And
Mm.
Bess, You Is My Woman. So for me, hearing what you're watching your film, listening to the dialogue between the interviewer and Ms. Brown, and listening to her sing, it just was in itself just a wonderment. How did you meet her, and how did you get to interact with her and convince her to even do this interview?
So Anne Brown is a once in a lifetime experience, and I wish that upon everybody. So my wonderful friend Kinshasa Holman Conwell called me, and it was a mix-up. She was supposed to call another Nicole, and she called me. That was the funny part. She tells it better, and and so she said, I'm doing a contract with the Center for Black Music Research. And unfortunately, the recently passed Dr. Samuel Floyd, who founded the Center for Black Music Research there in Chicago, it was, that is a very special place, the Center for Black Music Research. Let's just stop there, because he built the largest repository of Black music globally, internationally, around the world, that everything is there, and it's still evolving. So that we are not just two genres of music. You know, we did cover the classics. Of course, you know, jazz and gospel are really attributed, blues, you know, to us and everything, but there's so many others. And it was just so fascinating. They were searching and uncovering, and it's a beautiful spot. So please support the Center for Black Music Research. That's number one. Number two, Kinshasa asked me if I could do a promotional video for them. And I said, sure, you know, so people can get to know them again. How do we reach the masses go through video? And so I've done a couple of promo reels for them. So I got to know Dr. Samuel Floyd very well. And then he flew to New York, and he took me to lunch, and he said, I have something I want to talk to you about. And I said, yeah, what's up? And he said, do you know who Anne Brown is? I said, no, who is that? He said, exactly. So then he said, now she's the original Bess, the very first Bess of George Gershwin's Porgy and Bess. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I said, I just saw her. So there was a 1997 documentary done on Porgy and Bess, where you got to meet all of the Porgy and Bess couples. Did you see that one?
I haven't seen that, no.
Oh, it's so fantastic. And so I remember I was watching, I was living in New York, so it was probably 97, 98. And I was watching it, and my sister was there too. We were watching it together. And that was my favorite scene. So we were meeting all the couples, you know, because the filmmakers did a wonderful job of introducing, you know, all the Porgy and Bess couples, and Leontyne Price and William Warfield and everybody. So when it came down to Anne Brown and Todd Duncan, I was just like, oh, how sweet they looked. And they were the first. And the filmmakers had played them singing to them listening. And so I had put that, you know, scene in the fundraising trailer. And I remember, and it just stuck with me. Well, that was the woman that Sam wanted me to meet. And so he said, and so I said, yeah, I said, I remember it was my favorite scene of that documentary. He said, well, I want you to do a film on her. And I said, wow. I said, okay. And so I said, great. When do we get started? He said, well, I want you to meet her in about 2 weeks. And she lives in Norway. I was like, what? Norway? What? So then here was my dilemma. Now, I grew up in a house of music because my mother's a musician, piano. And, but it was, you know, classical piano and church music. She's a church musician and everything. We had a lot of jazz musicians around the house, but opera is not something I'm familiar with. So I like to research and do a lot of background. So I had to learn about opera, really learn about Porgy and Bess, which of course I saw as a young person, and kind of took on the mantra that a lot of people in the Black community did, was that crazy book, not our favorite story, but the music was fantastic. Right? So it's like, you know, we didn't really like seeing a black man, you know, wheeling himself around. I saw him on a skateboard, I think, when it was in St. Louis here I am now. I saw it at the Beauty Opera. I think he was on a skateboard or something. So it was always like Porgy was like, that was the most demeaning character in American literature. But the music was fantastic. And so, like you say, there's some favorites that come out of there. So it was always this kind of conflict, you know, when you're talking about Porgy and Bess. And so, but I had to, you know, dive into that. I had to dive into why we have that, some Gershwin history. I had to get all that together, plus how we're going to film it and the technical aspect of it. Who's my crew? And so very fortunate that I'm in the Black Documentary Collective out of New York. And so my friend Terry Carter had actually was married to a Norwegian at the time. And
Wow.
I was like, Terry's in Norway. Oh, thank goodness. So she used to be a production manager, Terry's wife. And so and so that was great. So that really, her name is Beata. She's unfortunately no longer with us, but her name was Beata. She's a beautiful, just energetic woman, and she just pulled it together for me. And Terry was the driver, and and they had probably met Anne Brown a few times, but you know, not to be as, you know, close as where we were going to be in the next couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. And took my DP from New York, Henry Adebanejo, and we were on a plane in 2 weeks. And what research could I do on Anne Brown? I'm like I'm like the unofficial biographer, because there wasn't too much. So I read everything I could, but she had an autobiography in Norwegian. So I couldn't read that. That made no sense to me. And I think this was before Google Translate. So I, so I was like, here we go. We're on a plane hoping for the best. And what worked in our favor is that we only had 4 days on the ground. The Center for Black Music Research sponsored it. And luckily, they sent an interviewer. And I'm not used to working with an interviewer. So they sent Dr. William Brown. And he, no relation to Anne Brown, he had been in Porgy and Bess. And as soon as she met him, and I met him with, you know, again, very little research, but he knew about being an opera singer and being in the show. So he was, you know, fulfilling a lot of those needs. And I wanted to talk to her about being in love and why she ended up there in Norway. And that was, she ended up there because her third husband brought her over. And so so I got those questions out of the way, just about being a woman. And then had him take the rest. So it was a beautiful thing, because as soon as they met, she totally fell in love with him.
Really? I could see the banter between the two of them was very, very, very social.
Oh, it was wonderful. You know, it was more than just two professionals. And it was just two people who just, you know, had a connection. And so literally that first day, she handed him her English transcript of the book. So we were able to read it every night.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
The questions for the next day, thank God. So it was all like a snowball effect of fortunate events and meant to be done. And now I've written a script actually called Bess that I'm hoping to get produced. And we have the blessings, you know, of the estate and everything. Anne Brown unfortunately left us in 2009. I miss her very much. Every time we like screen in public, you can catch me like crying. As many times as I've seen, you know, the footage that we shot. She's a beautiful person. And, you know, the last 4 years of her life, I was going over and filming 4 years or 6 years, 2004. I think that I met her 2004, and when she died in 2009. So, but I went over 3 times.
Oh, very cool.
And filming, yeah. So, and then we call each other all the time, and so she was just fantastic and beautiful friends over there, who just made it feel like home every time we went to Oslo. It was just really, really nice and wonderful. Miss her a lot.
Well, I'm going to say this, even though my wife is probably going to say, "Don't say that." I was listening to, going back over things, knowing I would be talking to you, and just going over things with Anne Brown and starting to get really teary-eyed because of how the interview itself and the segments made me feel comfortable too, and gave me that feeling of not so much being there, but still being a part. And I think that's the whole thing about the storytelling, the whole thing about trying to educate and bring people to different experiences. And so, yeah, I got a little teary-eyed. Again, I love music. Music's a big deal for me. I've been singing all my life. And so I have an appreciation for good music, and she has a beautiful voice.
Oh,
Music
she's
awards.
an opera diva. She's a top soprano. She was fantastic,
Yeah.
and it just singing meant the world to her, and it was and showed her the world. So it was really, really terrific. And I would just love more appreciation for our opera divas out there. My cousins sing opera, so I am very familiar with how wonderful opera is, and I need to dive into it more. But it hurts me that we don't support our, especially Black and singers of color, our opera singers. They're fantastic. That is a talent. That is
It is. There's
amazing.
a young lady I live in Indiana now. I'm originally from Chicago, but I live in Indiana now. And there is a African American diva, Angela Brown, ironically, and
Oh,
she has done a piece called, I think it's called A Woman's Life, and it's from the poems of Maya Angelou,
oh,
and
nice.
and the music was written specifically for her. And she fell into a situation where she met someone who knew Maya Angelou, and she was just throwing out ideas. And then the next thing you know, there's this musical piece just written for her. So, like you say, these people are out there. I think it'd be
Yeah.
great if more and more people knew more and more about them. So, I applaud you for bringing out Anne Brown to me, because I researched her more and watched more of the film clips that I was surprised to see from 1935 and 1942, and just enamored in watching and sitting there. Just my wife's like, you're a drop of the hat guy. Every time you start crying, get out of here. But, but that's me.
I know the feeling. I cry at UNCF commercials, so I got you.
um,
But yeah, but she was, she had really lived, and because she lived, fueled by her passion, I think all of us can connect to that. And it's like you want no regrets. And I don't think she, I know she had some, which she told me about personally, which may or may not make it on camera, because we have some more versions, to put out of this, as well as, the feature. But she loved singing, and she got to do it. It was interesting. I brought her a gift when I first met her, and it was about wonderful Black achievement in the arts and education in the U.S. And I thought it'd be nice, from home. And it just made her miss the U.S. because she got a little teary. And then she's like, well, I should be in here. I'm thinking, oh my God, yeah, you should. Oh my goodness. What I do. So, but that's why we're here.
Indeed.
So, yeah. Very funny.
You mentioned your project that you're doing with regard to Little Brother and the different segments that you're doing. So, if I read correctly, Malik Yoba is going to be one of the celebrity directors on one of the segments.
He is our first. Yes, we have some people that we've been talking to, but the first one we can announce is Malik. And he's going to do the New York chapter, which I was totally terrified of because, especially, when you get criticism and people really kind of, challenging you a bit, which is always great as an artist. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, we've been to these small towns. The first one was Camden, New Jersey. Second one was Chicago, not so small town, but, Camden, New Jersey, Chicago, St. Petersburg, Florida, Muskogee, Oklahoma, then Tucson, Arizona. And we're hitting north, south, east, west. And so, but, we didn't go to Atlanta. We didn't go to Newark. We didn't go to New York or Brooklyn, because it's like, I felt that people would say, what do these boys have to tell me and what's their problem? They have so many resources. So then we have that backlash that I thought that we might run into. And it's like, yeah. And my thing was, New York is so big. How do we tell that story? Well, Malik jumped right in. Malik, if you read anything about Malik, he spent a lifetime mentoring and working with kids and educational programs through art and theater And so he's perfect. And, and then he had his own documentary about fathers and sons come out, and a film, a narrative film that he started about dads. So, and he is a dad. So he was perfect for this. He's in love with the project. He's like, he's like, every time he thinks of these ideas, he's like, okay, I was thinking about doing this for little brother. And he's just like totally dissecting it, and just ready to jump in, but he has so many ideas. I'm like, okay, we have 15 minutes, Malik. So he's narrowing it down. And then he got cast in a show that's filming right now in Canada. So we have to go around his schedule. And he's all about directing this year too. So everything that's kind of lined up, and that he's been directing, and which is very exciting for Malik Yoba fans. And this is very special to him. And New York was not intimidating to him at all. He grew up in New York. He's in New York. So, and he's got some great ideas. So it's going to be a beautiful piece. Hopefully we'll shoot something late fall when he's on a little break from the show. And because we've been talking about it since the spring, and he's ready to go.
Again, I have brothers, and being a kid growing up in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, a lot of mixed emotion, a lot of different experiences. Being moved from school to school, going from a public school to a private school, and the things that you have to deal with in that. What made you focus on boys, young men, in that transitional stage from 9?
Yeah, it's really tough to really have a full library of young Black men saying the words "I love you," knowing that they can experience love without it being a threat to their safety. Getting people comfortable and seeing them in that light. That's number one, is saving our boys through the media images that we're putting out there. So I thought, what's the small contribution I can make to that? I'm a filmmaker. And it had to be very small. The films are not supposed to go over $5,000 to produce, because it's like we'll get $5,000 somewhere. So we couldn't wait on grants, because the grant makers don't understand what we're doing. Right. If it's about boys in prison and how they're staying out of prison and how can they avoid prison, or school to pipeline to prison programs, we get tons of money. It wasn't about that. So it was, I did not want to spend the time trying to convince a grant that I needed their money. So I said these have to be very small productions, done very, frugally with resources we have. And so the celebrity directors are stepping into that. But again, they know the mission. But again, getting those different images on camera of boys, it's very heartbreaking. I mean, people were talking. I think I heard somebody talking about the last year has been very tough on Black men, and the police. I call it the rogue police and Black men situation. I said it's not the last year. This has been happening a long time. So, the short memory there, that's scary. And I'm like, no, it's been happening a long time. In fact, the concept for Little Brother came around in 2009. So, and it's about putting forward some positive Black male images so that our educators and people they interact with, adult-wise and authority figures, get to know the other side and that what the possibilities are. Because if we keep showing them one thing, Black boy with a gun or hiding a piece or ready to fight, then it's not too interesting after a while, but yet so interesting for people to keep perpetuating. So it's, it's a whole systematic history that we have to deal with. But what we can do to change it would be, it's all we can do. Let's try to do something.
Yeah, indeed. I must admit, my parents were very good. The neighborhood I lived in for a time was very nurturing. Very much that village raised the child concept, but it was that neighborhood within the neighborhood of the angst and the terrible things were happening around us.
Well, that's what was interesting about the Chicago chapter, is that I did focus a lot on how the boys felt about the violence. Because I went to school in Chicago. I went to University of Illinois, Chicago, graduated from there. And I graduated in 1990.
Mm-hmm.
And around that time, there was about 900 plus homicides per year in Chicago. Now we're hovering around 500 plus. So if the homicide rate is cut in half. And we're seeing, Chicago shootings being the story of Black boys, a national broadcast. There's something going on, and I also know that maybe, the reason why there was, a gang culture versus in 1990 versus now might be, a different reason. Now it's about being the man, is what I'm told by some gang members in Chicago today. It's all about being the man, and then maybe differently, a different motivation in 1990. I don't know. I'm not a gang person. I'm not a gang member, but I know that the numbers were dire back then. They're less now, but the media hype is more. So
Right,
I'm trying to figure out what that's about.
I think that's a lot of it. We have to also look at the progression of the media and social networks and things like that. The exposure wasn't there because the technology wasn't there. And just like anything else, as things progress, certain other things perpetuate themselves. And so, as you alluded to, maybe the focus now is a little different than it was then. But let's think about this. We're talking about, just talk about Chicago for the moment. Everyone, even when I went to college, which was before you, even when
Where'd you go, Gregory? Where'd you go?
I went to Illinois Wesleyan University.
Wesleyan.
Okay, so even when I was growing up, people, you tell somebody from Chicago, and all I got was Al Capone.
Right.
And we're talking about so much.
And you need a bulletproof suitcase,
yeah, so much further removed from that, but yet the stigma is still there. And so then I look at movies when I was growing up, like Cooley High, which is really about the South Side of Chicago for the most part, and how things were then, and that was the 60s.
Yeah.
So every decade, there's something. But I think the one thing from the time that you were in Chicago and to now, social media has put a lot more out there. More filmmakers, i.e. yourself and other people who are out there paying attention. That's another way that these stories are getting out there. More and more is coming out about the things in the past. And some of these things are being emulated. Some of these things are being sadly respected in the gang community. And so it makes it just that much more difficult. Maybe certain crimes have gone down, but maybe other crimes have gone up. It's just a horrible cycle that continues. And we're talking about history way long before you and I really thought of. So it's a sad thing. And it's a major city thing, but it's also a rural thing. So we've got to find a way to stop the madness. And
I think opportunity also is maybe there is a lack of opportunity, but maybe there's no vision to see the opportunity in front of you. So if we can open that up and say, no, it is possible, and you can make a lot of money if you go through the regular channels of school versus the quick, money maker on the street. Maybe that's it. But the lack of vision, and that's again going to me as a media maker, and what can we do to help that? Because look, I was in middle class America, middle America, in the middle class. I mean, why would I ever think that I could work on the network shows that I've worked on, or meet the celebrities that I've met, or work in the field that I do, if I didn't have vision, to get me off that one little block off Highway 70 in North St. Louis. So, it was, I had the vision and education. And it's, to the students and the kids out there, it comes really quick. It seems like it's going to take a long time, but your success, or actually having a successful moment or a moment of hope, it'll come quite quick, and then you have to figure out what to do with that. And when it does happen,
I
so
think that a lot of people, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
oh, go ahead.
I think a lot of people don't realize that vision is not something that ends necessarily. It continues to evolve. And so you may start with this part of the vision, and then it evolves to that next thing or something else, or takes you out of that vision into another vision because of something you've experienced. I think vision and hope are the positive essence of life, along with love. And with that vision and that hope, you'll find that love and passion for something. And I think, i.e., like you're saying with regard to the film with Big Brother, you're talking to these kids about something that people don't even ever ask them. People don't ever talk to them about their passion and their love, and what is love and what is um, important to them. Um, this is a dialogue that needs to happen more often. So, of course, with the Big Brother and the different series and segments.
Little brother, not Big
I'm
Brother.
sorry, Little Brother. I apologize.
Yeah.
I'm
We
thinking
get
like
confused often.
a mentor is what I'm thinking. But in Little Brother, you're getting people exposed to, i.e., like you said, the conversation, and talking about, well, maybe we never looked at it like this. We never thought about kids actually having a soul, having a heart, having love, having ideas. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And I apologize for that.
Oh, no. A lot of people say that. They'll say, "How's Big Brother?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, that has such a negative connotation all the time." Big Brother.
Exactly.
You're
That's why I
definitely
said
Big
talking about on shoulders. That's the weight of an elephant on the shoulder. Big Brother. And then they say Big Brother. Now we start doing this number. Look at
Brother. Exactly.
Typically of that, I always see that. I think it was. I don't know if it's a Sony commercial or I think no. You know what? I think it's a one of those original commercials from um, not Microsoft but Apple, where the people are all marching in, and everybody's sitting down, and then the one person runs down with a sledgehammer to change the world. Because Big Brother's looking, and Big Brother's on the big screen looking down. It's like, don't do anything that's out of the norm or anything out of context. And, if you don't, then the world will be lost. So thanks for doing stuff to help the world not be lost.
I'm trying my small part, sure.
And putting that on your shoulders, Nicole. Not on my shoulder. I'm kidding. But so let's do this before we get out of here. Why don't you give us a little more information about this project that you're working on now that I guess is in pretty much post-production?
Yes, Title 7.
Title 7. Yeah, let's talk about that for a little bit. This is important stuff. My other gig, I'm looking at policy information and policy procedure. And we're talking about how people are being treated in the workplace. So let's talk about this aspect that's in the workplace that people aren't necessarily paying attention to.
Yeah, definitely. So this aspect of just employee relations and relations with each other, and first, how you feel coming to work every day and working with your cohort. There could be some abuse happening there, emotional, it's not just stress. I mean, you really are being emotionally abused and you don't recognize it. And then what we do is we take it one step further, and that it's from someone of your same race, and the reasons why behind that. And so that could get very tricky, extremely painful if you're holding on to, hey, that's kind of like a family member just naturally. And some people are like, hey, no, it's just work. But then they really can't carry that emotionally because naturally they felt like that person should have been more empathetic about certain situations. So just trying to survive the workday. Also, there's promotions that are overlooked on purpose. If you're trying to abuse someone, at work. And it's not only with promotions, but differences in salary. So it affects your life in a big way if you have some Title VII issues at work, in a big way, because it's personal. It's sexual harassment, it's racial harassment, it's national origin. It covers a lot of ground when it comes to your civil rights. And so we took a piece of it and kind of ran with it in this dramatic version, this dark and twisted tale called Title VII. And it's bad behavior at work. And it's I don't know what people are gonna call it after they see it. It's not a dark comedy. If there's some parts where you're like, are they serious? Did they just say that? And then some people who have seen clips are like, that happened to me at work, you know. So it's kind of like watching a version of The Office, but very dark.
You know, I've seen a few trailers, even very giving in allowing us to see different clips throughout the process of filming of this. And I saw the most recent trailer, and I sat there and I just like, oh my God, oh my God. And then I talked to my wife quite a bit. I said,
Okay.
I just saw this trailer that Nicole did. I'm like, oh my God. She's like, what? It's like, I feel so sorry for that lady. And I'm like, the abuse this lady is taking is just, and I said, and I didn't hear anything because I didn't even hear any sound. I let it go. Sometimes I just let stuff play out so I can visually see things. And I'm sitting there watching, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, and I had to keep going back. I'm like, what is going on? So yeah, even in Eclipse, I'm already saying that.
Yeah. So it's been, like I said, it's been a year-long process. It's been a quick year. We did an 8-day film shoot. So I'm actually going to be giving a workshop in October at Real Sisters, Real, REEL, sisters.org, at their annual film festival in October. I'll be doing a seminar on filming a micro budget and what it takes to do that. And we ended up, so essentially you talk about the woman. So the woman is now the CEO. We had a script for about 6 months where it was a male CEO and a woman coming in to interview for the job. Black male CEO, Black woman, and he doesn't have any Black employees. I brought on Craig T. Williams, a talented screenwriter, to help me with a rewrite. And he really streamlined the script into something that was tighter relationship-wise with the drama and the relationship of the characters, among the characters, and something that was affordable to shoot $150,000 or less. Because he's like, Nicole, first of all, you have a script that's $130,000 script, trying to do it on $30,000. I was like, I know. I hate this one banquet scene we have. We're all like, that banquet scene, the banquet scene. Oh, let's skip over the banquet scene. So no banquet scene anymore. Craig was like, I think we could have all of these situations, the events, the plot points of the screenplay all occur in the course of one day. I said, oh, I like that. So that meant for 8 days, everybody's wearing the same clothes, but but we had that, it was that urgency. And this, became a very bad day for the CEO because of his, lack of knowledge about what it is to hire your own and to be a Black man. Then at the last minute, before we turned the script into the cast, and the cast was waiting for the script, they're like, where is the script? It's almost June. July. And Craig said, wait, Nicole, I've been up all night. I got this crazy idea. I said, what? He said, what if we switch the roles? What if the woman is the CEO and the man is the one coming to interview her? And I was like, okay, Craig, I'm 95% there with you. And he's like, Nicole, all of the plot points work and it's stronger. And we don't have that many female-driven films of this nature where she is a bad person. But there's a reason for her being bad, and he brings that in so beautifully because he made one of the characters from her past an older character. I had it to be, the same age, but he made it an older character, and it just made sense. So he got the concept of what I was trying to do, and he just took everything and my intention for why I do this film. He just took all of that, put it in, and then we switched the roles at the last minute. And everybody's like, "What?" And they're like, "Wow, it's stronger, it's better." And I got to tell you, Jakava Honeychild, the actress who took it on, we shot the film in 8 days because of the shooting sequence and what we had to film every day. Her character went to the extreme every single day on set. She had to do something insane every single day because, I mean, it was just where we were in the script at that moment. Like, okay, today we're going to tackle that scene. And it was like, oh, today? And every single day. So, and she was awesome with continuity because you shoot out of sequence. You can't help it. I mean, if you're outside at one location, you got to shoot all those outside location scenes. And it could be the beginning and the end of the script all on day one. And I think that's what happened to us. So she knew, she's like, no, right before this, I'm feeling this way. Because she really, in a month's time, took it and mapped it out. Because I had a million things to think about. Basically, I was kind of giving the actors, every actor, here's your character's intention, here's the through line, and here's your background, here's your biography, here's who you are. Now let's work with it and do it quickly because we only have a 2-hour rehearsal, yeah, that kind of thing. So I mean, but it was really helpful. That was something I learned from writer, director, filmmaker John Sayles, is that even for people with one line in his films, walk-ons, he would write an entire character bio. So I got into the habit of writing those character bios, and I love it. And then literally, I gotta say, every actor that showed up knew exactly who that character was, and they loved being bad, and so it worked out. Thank God.
It's so funny. It's cool to build a building, but it's so much better to tear it down. So being bad just seems more fun for some reason. I don't know why.
I hope it's fun. I don't know. I'm really eager to see what the audience is saying because they're not going to be expecting this from me. Like I said, someone who usually covers Black women's joy. This is Black women's pain. This is exactly what this film is.
Well, sometimes it's good to be outside the box for a minute just to get perspective.
It is. Title VII it is, but it's very daring, and we go there, and I'm eager for people to see it, and we will have a chance to see it this fall, which is great. We can't break the news just yet, but maybe I'll tell you first so you can tell your audiences, and then we'll release it. But it's gonna be interesting. I can't wait for people to see it.
Well, if you decided to honor me by letting you know ahead of time, I am definitely an advocate of you and your efforts. So I get it out there, even if I have to tackle people.
So much, Greg.
If I have to tackle people, I'll do it.
Oh, fantastic.
That's kind of all I really had for you. I wanted to make sure that you mentioned your most recent project. Any other projects coming up that we should be thinking about coming from you?
Well, yeah, I mean, everything's kind of marinating. Title VII, the goal as an indie filmmaker, number one, is to get the film finished, and I think we're on track. I had the great fortune to have an editor working with me, so I didn't have to edit it myself, and it's just a relief and to have her eye on it. So Veronique Dumbai is editing, and she's just fantastic, and so she's doing a great job. Sandra Tuck is editing our trailer, and we might release that as early as Monday or Tuesday. So a full trailer this time. I cut the little first look thing that you've been watching, and that's all I could do because I just had some personal commitments to get to, and it's just things were moving on these other trains that I had to manage. So so I was able to put together a little something, but Sandra and Veronique have taken the reins. And other than that, what you want to do as an indie filmmaker, well, what was the purpose of making your film? So the purpose of making this film and in this format was so that I could get episodic directing jobs on episodic television. So hoping that I get it out there, and how's the best way to get it out there is that we want the film seen. The DP is Sibel Martin, and she's terrific. It's been out there a long time, over 20 years. And so I want her work seen on this because the shots we had were fantastic. Again, on 8 days, I think a lot of people are going to be commenting on that. And thanks, hats off to Sibel for hanging with me and the camera team and grip team and gaff team and the team we had given to us from FDU Film. Shirley Dickinson said, here are our students. Can you use them in significant crew roles? And we did. And that was great. I just brought in a few key crew. I had Sibel, I had the makeup lady, and I had the script supervisor and the actors. That was it. The rest were the students. And so that was a really interesting process. They were technically sound, very, very quick. So we got that done. And I'm very happy with the way it looks. So what we want to do is tour the film festivals. So, so we're going to give ourselves that year. So you'll be hearing a lot about Title VII during the year, but also my co-producer, Lisa Durden, we have about 7 producers that are just fantastic that are working with us. So hi, everybody, Sam, Emmeline, Carl, Kelly, Henrietta, Warren, Lisa. We are doing a Title VII town hall. And we'll let you know those dates too, Gregory, because we're going to be touring, hopefully, the U.S. So we can use this film to have people express themselves and how they feel about what needs to change, and that they have a voice and know specific places they can go to report bad behavior at work, because it really affects your life. And so we want to definitely hold those human resources conversations in an entertainment style, edutainment style type of way. And so so we started doing these on Facebook Live and Periscope live conversations with some experts, and those experts want to travel with us because they don't get to talk about same-race discrimination. So we definitely want this to have a life, in the community outreach space. So we're excited about that. The festivals to get us in front of the industry, hopefully get me work in the TV directing arena. That would be exciting. And so that, again, I want to get Bess, the feature film Bess, funded and off the ground. But I had to do a smaller film first in a narrative genre in order to get something that's probably a $6 million project like the Bess film, obviously because of the music. And, so I want to get the Bess film done. And hopefully in about 5 or 6 years, that'll be up. It's going to take a while. And then Little Brother, finish up the series in the next few years. So take it a little slower, let these things, go at their own pace, because the years are going to fly by. Then maybe I have about 15 more years in my career and can say I did something.
Well, you've already done something, because anybody taking notice, me, who you've never met from a totally different place, obviously I would think there are other people taking notice. And of course, I'm trying to, of course, get this video to more and more people to see, and continue to promote this so that we can support you and your efforts. So yeah, it's important. Well, I want to thank you for hanging out with me. I appreciate the fact.
I want to thank you for the invite, Greg. I want to invite people also, if you're on Facebook, to join our Facebook group, Nicole Films. And I'll talk more about it. If you ever visit NicoleFranklin.com, I'll keep promoting Nicole Films. But it's a place where we can, have, info on the films, but also chat about other films, and how important it is to support indie filmmakers and build audiences for us. And I want to make it a fun space for everybody to discover new talent and, mentor, hire a mentor, be a mentor, find a mentor. So it's, these are very important conversations. And I really appreciate that you asked, Greg. And we've been planning this for a few weeks. So I was very much looking forward to it. And I had a great time.
It was fun. It was fun. And I appreciate you more than you know. So thanks again, Nicole. If you can kind of hang out with me for a second after we get out of here, I wanted to just throw something by you. But I want to thank Nicole Franklin for hanging out and being a part of humanity, being a part of humanity that we can see, being a part of humanity that we can listen to and maybe get some concepts from. So thanks again for hanging out here on Let's Talk, etc. And we look forward to other wonderful people in our future. Thanks again, everybody, for hanging out. Take care.
Thanks. Thanks, Greg.